assistant professor of multimedia journalism at Virginia Commonwealth University. So the book is about different forms of socially responsible journalism. So it's an edited volume. So Nicole Daman and I invited eight experts in different areas to each write a chapter about a different form of socially responsible journalism. So what I mean by that is a type of journalism that is more productive, more forward-looking, more solution-focused than the kind of typical, more negative traditional news narrative. So examples would be there's a chapter on solutions journalism, there's a chapter on constructive journalism, there's a chapter on peace journalism, a chapter on explanatory journalism. So a lot of people are using a lot of different terms, and we're trying to let people know how they're similar and how they're distinct. It is working toward improving societal's well-being, creating a healthier public climate. I know that's broad, so there are specific ways to practice more socially responsible forms of reporting. So, for example, solutions journalism would be specifically reporting about how people are responding to problems. So instead of only reporting about the problem of homelessness, you find out what are people doing about it and make that the focus of the story. So that would be kind of one technique. Another technique might be, to incorporate certain types of emotions that can be evoked in stories that can make people feel a little more hopeful and a little less depressed, because news is a number one source of stress for Americans these days, and it's causing a lot of people to feel depressed and to feel anxious and to disengage, and we don't want to do that. We want people to engage, so you can do that by evoking certain feelings in your audiences. So there are different types of styles, and each style has a different technique for making more socially responsible news. I think that people are realizing that the status quo isn't working. A lot of people are disengaging with the news because, again, they're feeling depressed, they're feeling, stressed about it. And, a lot of people are cutting back in how much news they're consuming, or consuming more kind of entertainment, but less of the important news. And there was one survey that showed people started watching local TV news less often, and the number one reasons they cut back were because they said the news was too negative, too often about crime, and too seldom presented anything positive. So I think we're really seeing that people are disengaging and that what we're doing isn't working. And so I think that people are ready for something new. And I also think kind of the younger generation, I think millennials are really social justice oriented. And so I think younger people respond really well to this style of journalism. I think also the traditional idea that journalists are objective and we are just mirrors and we just take information exactly as it is and pass it on to audiences is a little outdated. And I think that more and more people are understanding that journalists make news, that they are contributing to the news in every decision you make as a journalist, in who you decide to interview, what topic you decide to write about or showcase at all, and what order you put that information and how you display it. And all of those decisions have an impact on how the story turns out and then how it affects audiences. So I think that people are realizing that journalists not only have an obligation to just transmit information, but have an obligation to do their best to help society improve. And I don't think that caring about the world makes you an activist. I would say that constructive journalism and specifically solutions journalism, are where I've seen the most research coming out in these areas. There's also been research in some of the other areas like explanatory journalism, slow journalism, peace journalism, these other areas I've mentioned. But I would say solutions journalism is where most of the research has been focused, both on what it is and how it's practiced and on what the effects of it have been. I think it depends what type of methodology they want to incorporate. So let's take solutions journalism for an example. If a journalist wants to start incorporating solutions journalism, one thing I would do is, I would suggest is to educate yourself as much as possible about what it is, to visit the Solutions Journalism Network website. And there's a very excellent guide, on what it is, and it outlines, what types of characteristics are included in a solutions journalism story. And that's really important because otherwise people might report stories that they think are solutions journalism stories, but they're really just more positive news stories. And it's important that these stories still have, rigor and evidence and these kinds of foundational journalistic standards. And so to educate yourself on what it is, and then to keep it in your mind when you're just developing story topics. So maybe you come up with a topic that you would typically write about, like, for example, coronavirus, let's say. Then you push yourself to think one step forward and think, what are people doing about it? How are people responding to this problem? And then make that the focus of your reporting. So choose sources, based on that. Ask interview questions based on that, and make that the bulk of your reporting. And then I'd also say that it would be a great idea to read examples of the type of stories you want to emulate. So again, the Solutions Journalism Network has a database of thousands of solutions journalism stories. So going on there and reading examples, I think, is a great source of inspiration to practice it yourself. Some people tend to be skeptical when they first hear the term solutions journalism or constructive journalism. And I would just say, instead of jumping to a conclusion about what you think it might be, or dismissing it too quick, to actually just spend a little bit of time looking into what it is and understanding it. Because I think once people take the time to understand what it is, that they are almost always supportive of it.